The coordinating conjunction. The coordinating conjunction in Hebrew is the vav. I think I've mentioned this, at least in passing. Generally, it's a vav followed by a vocal shava. And in some ways, it behaves like the inseparable prepositions, le, b, and k. One of the ways that it behaves, that the vav behaves like these, is that it attaches directly to the word that follows it. It doesn't stand by itself. So, for instance, we have a word like davar, which actually means word. At least that's one of the uses. It can also mean a thing or a matter, some things that have happened. In any case, if you add v to it, you just add it on. V. Just like you would with these. You just add it on. Actually, what happens here is it loses the dagesh lene. It's just a minor point, which is according to a root, so I'll get rid of it here. Let's delete it. You lose it because there's a vocal shava, and any vowel, remember, even the tiniest vowel, this vocal shava is enough to scare away dagesh lene. Dagesh lene is in here because this is the bagad kafat letter. You can go back to the previous models if you've forgotten about that. So, davar becomes v'davar. Just add it on. So that's how it's similar. It's a little different, though, if there is an article there. If you had a hey there, so let's put ha davar. If we added an inseparable preposition to that, we would exchange the hey with one of these consonants, right? If we add the coordinating conjunction, we just add it straight on, v. It does not replace the hey. So in that way, it's different. In any case, the first thing I want to look at here is the vav normally looks like this. It's the normal way it looks. But there are some other ways that it can show up. The second is that it follows the second rule of Shava, which you've seen, and so you have different vowels that can show up under the vav. Now the second rule of Shava, if you remember, is if you have a compound Shava, like that, like the chataf patach, preceded by a vocal Shava, then what happens? Do you remember? This one is going to change to the short vowel corresponding to the compound Shava in question. So you'll get a patach in your chataf patach. Now if this were chataf sagol, you would get a sagol. If this were chataf kametz, you would get a kametz hatuf. So if you have a word like chamor, which is donkey, and you add a v on it, what happens? You add a v, the v here changes, or the vocal shava, I'll just delete that. That is going to go to that. So instead of v'chamor, it's v'chamor. Okay, no problem. If you had emet, look at least one more here. Met means truth. I think it's another, yeah, emet. If you add a vav, instead of being pointed with a shava, it is a segol. And one more, just to complete the possibilities. This is the chataf patach. So chali means sickness. If we add a vav to it, the coordinating conjunction, we don't have the shava. We have the vowel that corresponds to this, which is the chataf, the kamet hatuf. Sorry, this is the chataf patach. This is the kamet hatuf. So vo chali, and sickness. So vachamor ve'emet vochali, vochali, perhaps you just say. So you see three different ways that this can show up, with a patach, with a sagol, with a kametz hatuf. But they all follow the rule, the second rule of Shava, faithfully. So it's not odd in terms of what we would expect. Now again, like these inseparable prepositions, if you have Elohim, if you remember Elohim had a chataf sagol, Elohim, if I can squeeze it in here, Elohim, if we add v to it, if you add lamed to it, you get le lohim. Remember? And it was because it followed the second rule of Shava, so this changed, and then aleph koyes, so it lost its vowel, and because it's aleph, the third step was that the previous vowel lengthened. And it lengthened from the segol to the tzere. Go back to the quiescent module if you forget that. Anyway, if you have the coordinating conjunction, which starts out as v, it also will go through exactly the same steps, and you end up with ve. This is gone because of quiescence. So velohim. So the vav here is functioning exactly like the inseparable prepositions. Let's take a look at what happens, the third case here. What happens with the first rule of Shava? Now, the first rule of Shava, if you remember, is what it talks about what happens when you have two vocal Shavas at the beginning of a word. And what happens is the first one changes to a hedek, correct? And the second one goes silent. So this becomes this. Now, the vav, the coordinating conjunction, will follow this rule if what we have here is a yud. If you have a yud, then it will follow it here. And the second step that happens is the yud quiesces. So let's put Q for quiescent here. And so it loses, if it quiesces, it loses its vowel, and you end up with V. So your vav would be here. Vav, vav, vav. So before a yud with a vocal shava, before y, you get V. It changes to V. And this is consistent again with what we saw with the inseparable prepositions. If you remember, Yehuda became Vihuda. Let me just write, what should I do here? Well, let's write it out, I guess. At least the beginning and the end states. Yehuda. We add V. And what happens is this one changes to a hedek. Well, let's write the final state. This changes to a hedek, and then this quiesces, so it loses this. You end up with that. So you end up with V, Huda. Again, if you want to know the details here, go back to the lesson on quiescence, quiescent letters. Okay, that's the third case. The fourth case, and I'll summarize this all at the end, don't worry. The fourth case is that, what happens with when you have two vocal shavas, but the consonant here is something other than yud? Well, something a little different. It does not follow the rule of Shava. The rule of Shava is not followed. Instead, it goes to U. The vav goes to U, so it sounds different. So that's when you have anything here other than yud. Let's look at an example. Let's look at Shemuel. Okay. I'll write this bigger. Maybe it won't be so sloppy then. Okay. Shemu. And then we have an aleph. El. Shemuel. If we add v here, we have a case, we have two vocal shavas, but it does not follow the rule of Shava because it will only follow the first rule of Shava if this consonant were a yud. And then we get V, just like we saw in the previous case. Instead, what we get is U. This guy changes to U. So, let's get rid of this, and let's put our U in there. So we get Ushmuel. Okay? Similarly, if we have a word, let's take a look at Devarim. Devarim. It's supposed to be an comments there. Devarim. mercy. Devarim. Okay, devarim, we add a v there. What's going to happen? Well, it's not going to obey the rule of Shava. Instead, we're going to get u. And so we get u. Now, the dagash lene is going to disappear because we have a vowel before it. So if you have a dagash lene, this is just the rules of dagash lenes. They tend to take off. Well, they do take off. They disappear if there's any vowel before it, even the smallest of vowels. And u is certainly a vowel. Now this is the one case. If you remember early on, I said there's one case where a word in Hebrew will start with a vowel. This is the only case. Otherwise, you always have to have syllables, therefore words, have to be either CV or CVC. Right? You can't get VC. This is the only case. The case where you get U. So it's a little different. Exception that way. So that's what happens when, with all the other cases of first rule of Shava. If you have anything other than a yud, it'll go to U. Yud followed by vocal Shava. Now there's another case, we'll call this A, where you get the same result. For B, it was for A, this is for B. If you have a labial, if Vav precedes a labial letter, which are the labial letters are M, B, and P. M, B, and P. And in one textbook, this one by Rebecca Wright, Vicky Hoffer, and Bonnie Kittle, page 248, they mention a nice little mnemonic. They call these the bump letters. B-U-M-P. So that's one way to remember them. The bump letters. If you have a Vav before any of these, it also goes to U. So, let's look at some examples of those. Bayit. Ba. Bayit. You put Vav before it, you get U. And again, it chases this away. If you have a dagash lene, it's going to disappear. So, get rid of it. Uvayit. Bayit becomes Uvayit. Moshe. Moshe is Moses. Mo. Now, one thing to note here. Let me finish the word here. In printed texts, you'll often have only one dot. If you have a holum followed by a sheen, you won't put two dots. You can have two dots if you want, but don't be surprised if there's only one dot there. One dot will play both functions, the holum and the sheen dot. Anyway, if you add vav on there, you get u. So, u Moshe. And let's take a look at the third one here. Petach, meaning door. Petach. Stress is there. Again, it's a labial, and so you get u petach. Actually, it was also, this is Begad Kafat letter, right? Pe. And so it, by itself, without this, it would have had the dagash lene just like this one did. And then we lose it when we put the vowel on. So, okay, now the last case, case number 5. And don't worry, I'm going to review this, so it won't be so difficult once you see the review. Vav before a tone syllable, especially with paired words, will sometimes go va. Let's look at an example of this. How about tov? Good. Tov vara. Okay, this is the tone syllable because there is only one, so obviously it's a tone syllable. And this means good and evil. So there are words that exist as a pair. And in that kind of situation, you often get va. So good and evil. Or you have something like yom. Yom, and then you'll have va. Laila. Laila means night. Yom is day. Lai, la. So again, both conditions are met. This here is supposed to be note the accent or the stress. Both conditions are met because it's the first syllable that is stressed. This happens when the vav precedes a tone syllable, so it has to be the first syllable, either monosyllabic or the stress has to be at the beginning, and the two words have to be some sort of pair. So, good and evil, day and night. Or vachoshech would be another one, light and darkness. So or is light, supposed to be resh. Or, va, and choshech. Again, stress is there. Cho. This time I'll just put one dot because you have a sheen with a hole. We'll just do one dot. Cho, shech. Or vachoshech. So again, both conditions. Vav immediately preceding a tone syllable and a paired word, light and darkness. So that's the fifth condition. The fifth state or fifth case. Okay, let's review. Summary. 1. Vav normally shows up like this. V. It's just Vav with a Shava under it. 2. Before a compound Shava, it takes the corresponding short vowel. So, before this, you would have that. Before that, you would have that. And before Chataf Patach, you would have the Kametz Hatuf. The Chataf Kametz, you'd have the Kametz Hatuf. If I said Chataf Patach before, earlier in this module, I don't remember, I meant Chataf, or I should have said Chataf Kametz, in the Kametz Hatuf. And this, of course, is the second rule of Shava. So, you can take these forms. Try to squeeze everything on here. Before Y, Vav becomes V. That's the first rule of Shava, followed by quiescence of the Yud. Okay? 4, before a Shava, in other words, anything else, we'll just do this to denote any consonant, followed by vocal Shava, anything other than this one, and the bump letters, labials, oops, let's make capital M, before a Shava, except this, and the labials, you get U. And then the fifth case is before a tone syllable, has to be a tone syllable, immediately before a tone syllable, and a paired, some sort of pair, or in some sort of pair, before a tone syllable, in between two words that are some sort of pair, you get va, as in good and evil. So there's your summary. You've got v, you've got these three, which follow your compound Shavas. We have v, we have u, we have va. It looks, now this, by the way, is your Kametz Atuf. A lot of different things. But I think in reading, it really won't throw you that much, because you'll see a word and you'll see this vav with some sort of vowel under it. In most cases, it's simply v.